It seems that following on from the leaks that we saw last night, it seems that Warhammer community have indeed followed up with a bit more explanation, and we've got a fair bit of info for what's coming in next year's chapter approved. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about the new and interesting mission changes to Warhammer 40K and Games Workshop's in-house event that they're going to be running over the weekend. Basically, this largely confirms the information of last night being true, a few interesting shake-ups to the missions that will be in the new book, and a couple of the actual specific missions being showed off, as they're going to be the ones that are going to be played on Warhammer Community's Twitch stream. Apparently in this US Open finale there's going to be only 8 players, basically the top 4 people who won Best General or Best Overall in their previous events, though I must admit seeing this as any sort of actual final seems a little bit hollow without Mr. Siegler in attendance. Apparently he couldn't make it, and seeing as he won every single one of the other 3 events, it's kind of hard to say that there'd be any sort of Best Overall without him being there. Games Workshop have done a bit of an interesting shake-up on their normal tournament format apparently. The things that they're going to be streaming on their Twitch stream are going to be a mix between exhibition matches and actual championship matches. Apparently players submitted their models for the exhibition matches and Games Workshop made some army lists for them from them. That's a really unusual idea, but I guess they wanted to show off quite a few armies rather than just the absolute top tier ones. Definitely a very weird system and wouldn't work unless it's a very tiny event like this, but it should guarantee some fun and interesting games, and perhaps a little bit different, putting some very talented players in charge of interesting armies, though perhaps with a bit more diverse unit selection, and I think it could be really interesting to see the top generals take command of those type lists. The ones for the championship matches, though, appear to be player choice armies, just how you turn up to a normal tournament, and I do think it's a little bit telling that 3 out of 4 of the best general selection all seem to be playing Coven's Drakari. It seems that the Talos, Kronos and Grotesques are just a little bit difficult to resist, and I can't help but think that the Blood Angels player is going to get quite a lot of support in that, though it does look like it might be an uphill struggle, fighting against an army which has massive -1 damage and lots of fight last mechanics. Games Workshop's article doesn't go into quite this much detail. There's a lot more explanation on a post by Goonhammer, which I will link in the video description, as 2 of their players have managed to make the cut for the event. Moving on though to the actual game changes, and Games Workshop have allowed us to download the missions that are going to be played at this event. They're over on their Warhammer community webpage right now, and they're basically going to be 2 of the missions from Chapter Approved 2022. The 2 missions are Secure Artifacts and Recover the Relics. This Secure Artifacts one is a 5 objective mission, and it's one of the ones where the objectives do a little bit of pre-game movement. You get to reposition 2 objectives up to 6 inches, one player gets to choose one of the ones marked A or B, then the other one gets to reposition 2 that are marked A and B, and then the first player gets to reposition the last. Once that's done, one objective in enemy territory is nominated as a primary objective by each player, basically designating it as a really important target that they need to try and take at all costs. Those primary objectives might not be the hardest thing to take ever. If you move the objectives in no man's land towards your own lines, then the enemy really might be hard pressed to keep hold of them. I'd certainly bear in mind though that the other player is likely to be doing the same to you. As rumoured last night, it does seem that the primary objectives are going down to scoring 4, 8 or 12 points per turn. You need to hold 1 objective for 4, 2 objectives for 8, or 12 objectives for holding 2 and more than your opponent. That's not always going to be the easiest to max each turn when there's only 5 objectives on the board. It certainly seems likely that you're going to be taken down to 2 objectives or less each turn, unless you have a whole load of obsec and a whole load of staying power on those midfield ones. The interesting bit though is this bonus primary objective that you get, which it looks like each of these new missions are going to be getting, and it's basically an opportunity to make up the difference on those primary objectives and get up to an extra 3 victory points each turn. In this one, you have to hold the primary objective marker in your own territory, just taking it at the end of each of your turns. You don't have to hold it after the enemy's turn, and that would net you an extra 3 victory points per turn. I think usually the opponent's going to nominate the one that's in no man's land, so say objective A for the player on the left. So that means in your turn, as well as killing the enemy, holding the primaries and doing your secondaries, you'd be wanting to try and clear the enemy off objective A and put one of your units on there, even if it's quite an expendable unit that might well get deleted in turn. Also, as anticipated, there's no unique secondary in this one, but that bonus primary objective will be in effect every single game, so it always means that this mission will be playing a little bit different to just the standard run-of-the-mill take objectives and do secondaries, and the same goes for all the other missions. I think perhaps their design philosophy with these new missions is that maybe each one is just slightly altered in some way. With this one you get to shift around some objectives, and then you have a bonus primary that you also need to bear in mind. The other one that they've previewed is called Recover the Relics. This one you seem to be deploying from the short board edges, and there's quite a lot of objectives in this one, 4 in the midfield and 1 in each player's deployment zone. With this one they've actually done a bit of manipulation with command points, where you'll basically only get your free command point each turn if you control an objective outside your deployment zone. I guess that gives an extra incentive to moving out to take the midfield rather than just castling up, though to be honest that's not usually going to be a great tactic anyway if you want to win the primaries. As a bonus, it rewards you defending your home field objective and trying to take your opponents, as if you manage to take and hold the enemy's deployment zone objective, then you actually get a bonus command point when you generate them at the start of each turn, and that could be a seriously nice boost late game to have far more options than you'd normally have at that point. I think usually that is going to be hard to do. Most people are usually quite good at taking and holding their home objective, but I guess if you could do some sneaky things with fast movers or reserves to get round there, you're extra rewarded for clearing them off. As before, despite having 6 objectives, this one you still get the primary points for holding 1, 2 or more than your opponent. Maybe a little bit easier than the last one in this mission, seeing as there's lots of objectives on the board, and at least 3 within easy reach of your deployment zone, so shouldn't be too hard to score. Finally, for the bonus primary objective, you also get 1 victory point for a sort of kill point mechanic, where each battle round you get up to 3 victory points for killing enemy units, 1 victory point for each. So over the course of the 5 turns you could in theory score up to 15 victory points, but I think that is usually going to be very unlikely. Your opponent might not even have 15 units, and you might theoretically waste a few kills if you kill too many of the enemy army within 1 turn. Basically this is a mini kill points mechanic, perhaps far less powerful than it has been done in previous editions, where in the past kill points might be literally the entire game, and it's kind of interesting that it just slants this mission a bit more in terms of destroying the enemy army rather than just holding those points. Whenever you have advantages like this, it will give advantages to certain armies. In particular, kill points will give advantages to armies that don't need all that many units to be effective. More elite units like Grey Knights, Custodes, or even Imperial Knights are really going to like this. Ones that want to be having tons of squads on the board, maybe not so much. In general though, I think that most of the changes that they've made seem sensible at the moment. There's no denying that these missions look a little bit more different and interesting compared with the previous chapter approved ones, and they certainly don't seem like they're doing anything too wild and crazy in terms of those bonus primaries. I don't think ones like the kill point ones are going to make games unwinnable for certain factions. I look forward to hearing what you have to say though. Let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like it, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep up with news of Games Workshop's releases, with new videos out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Making all the content does take a fair amount of time and effort, and if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.